You listening to Illuminate, our Hands at Work Advent series on the Meanwhile in Africa podcast channel. From Ernest's early days, life was very challenging. His mother worked in the market, desperate to provide for her family. His father didn't work. Discouraged by their future prospect, Mom, Dad, and all 7 children moved to the community of Oshuk, hoping for more opportunities and a better life. Some things really did get better. They had a place to stay, and the children were in school, and they even had some cattle. In the mornings, Ernest would wake up very early, start the fire, put the kettle on, grab his herding stick on the way out the door, open the fence and take the cows out to the hillside to feed, come back to the house and get ready for school. Those little legs moved quickly to make it to school on time. He couldn't help but to always feel tired. Sisanda, a South African volunteer who works closely with the local Hands at Work office, shares.
An ongoing physical condition for Ernest caused him to collapse and fall, preventing him from finishing school after he had completed grade 7 because he was always behind.
When Ernest had reached 18 years, one of his relatives invited him to come and live in Pretoria, one of the largest cities in South Africa, with a population of nearly 3 million. He saw this as God's goodness to him. His aunt was going to help him get a job, but nothing seemed to pan out. For many years, he did odd jobs wherever he could find them. Like his early days, he was always running from one thing to the next. Eventually, he met a woman who captivated all his attention. They got married. Not long after, for the first time in his life, he landed a stable job as a cook at a popular restaurant. They had children, and they were happy with the life that God had given them. Stable did last for quite a while, but no one could have seen that the company he worked for would fall on hard times. Ernest was retrenched, and all the pressures of earning living were met with the staring eyes of little ones who greeted him as he came home from work early that day. What next? He was caught off guard.
For all of his life, Ernest had been feeling called to be a pastor, and so when this happened, he went into the pastoral ministries. The church he was attending didn't have a pastor at the time, and the bishop of the denomination confirmed the calling upon his life to be a pastor.
It was an opportunity and a dream come true, but the church had no means of paying a pastor's wages. The responsibility of providing fell on his wife. She was a rock and kept the family together. She was amazing, and Ernest knew it. Life is full of surprises, good surprises, and painfully horrible surprises. It was unexpected. His wife went to the hospital for something very minor, and while in hospital, she passed away. Everything fell apart. His 3 youngest children needed a mother figure. They needed more love and nurturing than he could provide.
When his wife suddenly passed away, he was very overwhelmed. He went back to work, but he didn't have the capacity to fully raise all 5 of his children, so he sent 3 of the youngest back to Oshuk for his mom to take care of them.
His 3 youngest children would be raised in the same home by the same woman that had raised him. It was not quite the same for his children. It was clear that their grandmother was struggling to care for them. It was noticed by the local care workers, Christian women from the churches in Oshuk who are committed to seeking out and bringing God's hope to the most vulnerable families in the area. They knew this grandmother needed some support. 3 children from the city was just too much for her. She was not handling it well. Meanwhile, in Pretoria, Ernest found work again as a cook and got remarried. They had a son who was prone to frequent seizures. Ernest was unable to be away from the house for long periods of time. Then the COVID-19 pandemic hit Africa. He suddenly found himself without a choice but to be home due to the lockdowns. Like many in the service industry, he again found himself without a job. Ernest was taking stock of his life. He had 3 young ones in Oshuk, which he was concerned for. He had heard that the pressure was draining his mother. He was hearing from neighbors about mistreatment and neglect. It seemed clear to Ernest that he must take his family and make his home in Oshuk. Staying with Ernest's mother until they could find a place of their own, the relationship with his mother was strained. It was always tense in the house. Something had to change. It took time and living apart and the willingness to talk about things that were really unpleasant. But God restored their relationship. He brought healing. He brought hope. Today, Ernest can say that he has a positive relationship with his mother.
His desires for his children to finish school has never had the opportunity himself to do that.
In Oshuk, Ernest also found a church family and became their pastor. It's not a paid position, and making ends meet still remain a struggle. Thankfully, he is not alone. All 5 of the children are known and loved by the care workers. They are invited each day to come to the care point where they can play with others and have a hot, nutritious meal.
It lifts the burden off of his shoulders as he doesn't work and he doesn't have to provide 3 meals a day. Food wouldn't last the whole month if he had to feed them 3 times a day.
The care that the family receives is not limited to their physical needs. Regularly, the care workers visit Ernest and the children in their home. They are a source of hope and encouragement. They tell the children that God sees them and loves them. Recently, Hands at Work hosted a day for pastors in Oshuk. Ernest was there alongside with many others. They heard from scriptures and from the experience of volunteers with Hands at Work that it is vitally important as a Christian to care for the orphaned and the widowed, the poor and the weak. Everything that happens at the care point is a truly practical love and care. Thank you for listening to Ernest's story. His name has been changed for privacy. You've been listening to Illuminate podcast by Hands at Work in Africa. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, please find us on Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts by searching Meanwhile in Africa. Learn how you can give the gift of hope. Visit www.handsatwork.org/thegiftofhope.